I actually feel this is part of my purpose. I've had all manner of spiritualists and people and past life people do, and people are absolutely convinced that my role in that people of that persuasion, that my role is to be persecuted, but to raise awareness. And so I see that as it's all part of it. So it really isn't bravado. If people came storming in here with guns, I'd be like, let's do this. I actually feel I would.
You're a heretic.
That's why I'm here.
You're right for the show, I'll tell you that.
That's exactly why I'm here.
In your documentary, by the way, I remember we've spoken about David Cameron, of course, the former Prime Minister. There is this scene and I remember at the time when Philip Schofield on GB News starts showing him a list of suspected, is it politicians?
Yes.
Yeah, and Cameron doesn't want to know about it.
Yes.
What's going on?
Yeah, that was this morning, and I worked extensively with both Holly and Phil.
Yeah.
On this morning. And so what happened was Philip had taken a list off the internet from conspiracy sites and presented it to David Cameron. Now, that in itself is a very iffy scenario, because that predominantly is around Lord Alistair McAlpine. That was what triggered all of that off. And
okay, who's he?
Lord Alistair McAlpine was one of Margaret Thatcher's close allies. He was Conservative Party chairman at some stage. Certainly he was very high in the Conservative Party. He was an alleged pedophile. And around that period of time when it was all kicking off, it was Alistair who sued. His lawyers actually put out a message on Twitter saying anybody who said that they were going to sue him. That was one of the first sort of major takedowns of social media that I've ever witnessed. But there was a whole series of events. ITV, I think, ended up paying, I think it was £127,000, wow. Something phenomenal. And you couldn't even see his name on that list that was being handed over. But what it did again was it shut down. It made the media was like, gung-ho, let's go after them, let's get them. In the most irresponsible way imaginable. There was a Newsnight special which featured Stephen Measham, who was a young boy who had been in a North Wales care home. And again, he was said to have said it was Alistair McAlpine, who they didn't mention anybody in Newsnight. But again, people were on Twitter, including John Bercow, who used to be the Speaker of the House. Yes. His wife had done this. And that was what set off the whole Twitter alarm when it was still Twitter. She'd done this thing saying, why is Alistair McAlpine trending? Something like smiley face or something like that. And they sued her for that. And that sent her. And I thought, and all of this was what fueled me to do paedophiles in Parliament. And I was like, this is really weird, because like the media aren't really doing anything. And yet it's sending this massive warning to everybody to shut up. Not say anything. And by
being stupid about it and then getting sued.
Exactly. And also what was wrong there was the Philip Schofield list to David Cameron. David Cameron started going on about we can't have a gay witch hunt. And it was the conflation of homosexuality with being a child abuser. Now that is as old and hackneyed a stereotype as you're likely to get. And it's utterly repugnant. And the two should never be in the same conversation.
Is it possible that he was actually making a fairly progressive point in that case, that he was concerned that there were homophobic people who were inventing things about gay people?
Right, I allow for that because I've worked extensively with lesbians and gays, and for years I've done all the Pride marches. When I still liked Pride, but. Yes, that is possible, and I don't rule it out. And we also know there was an awful lot of politicians who felt unable to show their true nature because of homophobia.
Well, Philip Schofield himself, was asking the question.
Absolutely. So all of that was plausible, absolutely. But what that enabled was other politicians to suddenly go, they're coming after me because this is part of a gay witch hunt. And so I don't like anything like that enables that. It's like, you're absolutely right. There is a thread of truth there. And we should observe that. But it isn't all. It isn't everything. And we have to be careful.
Schofield himself, was also doing dodgy things himself. Not quite the same, is it? I don't know how serious it was. No. I've criticised him quite heavily without thinking now he has to go to prison forever, and be gone forever.
That was more of an abuse of power than anything.
It depends who you believe, doesn't it? Because I was always hearing that the kid was very young when he met him.
Yes.
I don't know, like 11 or 12.
Well, there was a picture of them when the boy was young.
But because Schofield, I think, says they met when they were 15 or 16, because I'd heard 11 or 2. So, and I might have just heard nonsense. But then also Schofield said nothing happened until they were 18, which later changed to 21, I think.
Yeah,
there's two accounts.
But he's already been proven to be a liar. So how can we trust him?
So that's the issue. If he's telling the truth, it's more just of a power issue.
Yes.
But if he's not, it's a legal issue without it necessarily being a pedophilia issue, because that's just another topic, isn't it? But pedophilia versus haemophilia.
Yes, yes.
There are people who have an interest in prepubescent children.
Right.
And there are other people like, I believe J.D. Salinger was a famous one, who are interested in sort of 12 to 15 just after puberty or whatever it might be.
Yes.
And if Schofield was doing whatever he was doing with a 16 or 17-year-old, that's not the same as these politicians, but it's still very wrong.
Yes, I think it's all wrong. Abuse of power, I remember seeing around this morning, I found it extraordinary that this intern had access everywhere.
Yeah.
Truth is, we don't know the truth, because this is a man who lied for decades about his sexuality. The whole coming out, sat next to Holly Willoughby, was horrendous.
Kevin Spacey defense.
Why do you think that happened, though? Why do you think that happened?
What, that he came out?
Yes.
Because he had to sort of make it into a victim story, like I'm coming out despite homophobia and things, to hide that he knew what was coming out, which was that he had groomed a young child.
That's right. That is why Philip Schofield came out. Holly Willoughby, all of that was farce, an absolute farce. One of the funniest things around it was when it was being discussed on, I think, Good Morning Britain, and Joan Collins turned around and said, he's come out. Didn't everybody know he was gay? Because people inside know.
Yeah.
People inside know.
People inside knew about Savile.
Yes. It was a huge topic, apparently.
Louis Theroux knew.
Green rooms. Well, now that is another interesting topic, isn't it?
Okay, so you tell me then, because from what I've seen, is that Louis sort of knew, but didn't know enough to really push Savile. But when he did push Savile, he said, "Oh, do you mean about those rumours about the isn't he a pedophile?" So he knew enough to know there were rumours, because again, I was too young for any of this. So now I know, okay, there were actually rumours everywhere, to such an extent that it wasn't mad for Louis to ask that to Jimmy, with Jimmy saying, "What?"
Exactly.
So it must have really been out there more than people remember.
Esther Ranson says so, doesn't she? She says it was always a topic of well, not always, but it was a topic of conversation in green rooms. There were producers who were told, don't allow children near him. This went on. I didn't know any of this. You see, the thing is, even though I've worked in there, I was never an insider because I couldn't be trusted. I couldn't be trusted to keep those sorts of secrets. I was a useful insider. I was the token radical in any situation that I was in. They allowed me in because it gave the appearance of some sort of balance taking place. But that was the only reason I was there. But really, I was an outsider for many, many years, and happily so. But yeah, to our understanding, all these things were open secrets.
What do you make of the Theroux scene?
I have many questions about Louis Theroux. Many questions indeed. Have you ever seen when he did the Hamiltons?
Yes.
Which
was again for non-Brits.
Oh, sorry.
Two politicians who were married, and he went and stayed with them.
Yes, and it was quite phenomenal that while he was filming them, this incredible story came out, a sexual story where they were apparently involved with.
Yes.
Yes, really, it all happened all on camera. And Louis Theroux is an insider. This is not to say that his actions are criminal or that he was aware of anything that should be reported, but Louis Theroux would have known a great deal more than somebody like me. And that is also why a Louis Theroux is given huge platforms.
Yeah. It is something that's difficult, because on the one hand, I got into this because of, as so many others did, people like me sort of dopey white middle classy guys. We see, oh, there's Louis. I can be like that.
Very good at what he does.
Very good at what he does, and I don't want to criticize too much just from a personal point of view, because I'd like to work with him one day. I've tried to. I spoke with his wife and tried to get something going, and it didn't quite. Not with his wife like that, but she works at Mindhouse production company with him, and they're great and fine and everything. But it is frustrating. I went through a whole period. I made a film about an exorcist for BBC, and it was like a Louis Theroux kind of thing. And it took 2 years for us to get BBC to watch it. They eventually bought it, didn't pay us any money. They paid us £6,000, but then they made us make changes that cost more than that. So we lost a few thousand making it, basically. When we said, hang on, but other people are getting millions and things like that, they were like, look, take it or leave it. And I even said, but I thought you were about bringing up the new people, the new talent. I was young, and we made the whole film ourselves. Me and my friend David, and they were just like, well, take it or leave it, that's what you're getting. They put it out, it got best of 2018, it was on their list, it won festival awards, all of that.
Wow.
And then I tried after that, because The Exorcist tried to kill me, it put me in a room and sort of locked me there and stuff, and we got that camera. But anyway, we tried to make the next films.
You're really not as straight as you think you are, you know.
Well, I guess I'm the sort of the straight foil to the mad stuff going around. I don't know. And
Conductor.
Yeah, symbol of the madness all around. And so afterwards, I sat in production meeting after production meeting, sometimes with the BBC themselves, sometimes with production companies who were trying to sell to the BBC. And every single one of them, 100% of them, like about maybe 100 different production companies, said halfway through or towards the end, of course, you will have to be behind the screen because you're a white man, and we're going to have to get a minority to be the journalist. And I was just like, but it's my story. I've looked into this crazy thing in Bolivia or whatever it was, the stories I had. I can't just be behind camera and pretend somebody else had done this story and this tokenism and all this stuff. And they were like, we're really sorry. Like, that's just what the BBC are going to take. Channel 4, even worse. And it was gutting at the time because I was on minimum wage at the time. I was trying to make ends meet, trying to see where my next meal would come from, really. It wasn't that bad. It was fine. But it was gutting. And then I did start to look at Louis, who I admire so much. And then he kept telling it in his books. And he's very honest. And he says, they were throwing a series at me with my name in it.
Yeah.
And I was saying maybe half an hour. And they were going, no, you should do 1 hour. And maybe 2 or 3 episodes. No, 6 episodes. Have them. Have as many as you want. Here's Michael Moore. He can be your friend now and help you. And he'll get you into it. Michael Moore. You're just suddenly friends with Michael Moore. His dad is Paul Theroux, the famous writer. His brother is Marcel Theroux, the documentary maker. His cousin is Justin Theroux.
I mean, it is connections.
Jennifer Aniston's ex-husband,
right.
Justin Theroux.
It is hugely connections.
So it's hard, and it was hard in that moment not to look at his success and want some of it and to feel a little bit bitter because I just was trying to make ends meet. But, and also because of the Louis of this world and the Paxmans and the Clarksons and all of that, that's part of why there was a reaction against white men on TV, because those guys got in at a time when that was allowed, and so there were so many, and then the younger batch couldn't be white men.
The thing is, I don't know enough about Louis Theroux. I saw an interview with him on the what was it? It's CEO, the CEO's interview.
Diary of Stephen Bartlett.
Yes, that's right. And I thought there were moments there where I got a little glimpse of the Louis behind the curtain, and I didn't like it.
Really?
There was something that I didn't like, especially when he was talking about his ex-wife and what his ex-wife had to say about him. And which, I mean, we've all been subject to some crazy ex-partners at some stage or another. So, I don't think you can always trust what your ex is necessarily saying about you. But there were just some things that I was uncertain about. And now you've told me they were just throwing these ideas at him. And that is because not only was he extremely well connected, and we know that nepotism rules in media, particularly in TV. Look, Channel 4, they've just had to admit, haven't they, that big new program, the sort of Swingers Next Door or whatever.
That's right.
It was written by the husband of the commissioning editor. Yeah. So we know it happened. So there will be a huge element of that. He brought the name with him. But I also think that he never goes too far so that it is destabilizing for anybody in any way. And I think that's probably a huge part of it. I would go too far. I mean...
You mean Louis as a presenter?
Yeah, in terms of... I think he pulls back from digging deep on investigations that would unsettle scenarios. And I think Savile was a good example. And again, I am not making any claims about him because I simply don't know. It's just my observations. I felt that the Savile interview left me deeply uncomfortable. I felt that there were two people there who seemed to understand something that the rest of us were just outsiders. too, and I was uncomfortable about that. I'm not accusing him of knowing about Savile, but as you say, he must have known something to even be able to have that conversation in the first place. So,
but as you also say, to make those allegations when they might not be true is horrific.
Horrific.
So I do understand why he didn't.
It's very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult. But I am of the belief that you don't get such a huge platform like that if you are upsetting the establishment left, right and centre.
Interesting. How could it wouldn't have worked? It's a good point, because on the part of my head's going, well, this sounds conspiratorial, and then the other part's going, well, if the BBC was so in cahoots with Savile, if the royals were so in cahoots, if the politicians, and we know that, there's no way he could have pushed more, even if he did know more.
There you go. You've answered your own question.
I do like Louis.
Yeah. The thing is, when somebody is that sort of high caliber at what they do, they make what they do look really simple. And so everybody thinks they can do it. This is, and that is the reality, because, he's like, it looks like he's almost sloppy, but he's not. It's very, very calculated. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's very intelligent. And so I've always enjoyed watching his shows. But yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to know who knows what. But Esther Ranson said there was loads that was said in green rooms about him. There was a lot of people who knew about Jimmy Savile and did nothing.